The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Wright family home on New Terra. Alan Wright sat at the kitchen table, his breakfast half-eaten as he checked his travel documents one last time. At 17, he had his mother's sharp, blue eyes and his father's gentle smile. Today would be his last day on the colony world before departing for his internship on Vector Prime, the central world of the Zorak Galactic Confederacy. "Got everything packed?" George Wright asked as he entered the kitchen, his diplomatic uniform already crisp despite the early hour. Alan nodded. "Just double-checking my visa approval. The Zorak are strict about documentation." George placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "They're strict about everything. Remember what I told you. Show respect, speak only when spoken to, and never look a High Council member directly in the eyes." Alan finished with a small smile. "Dad, I've been studying alien protocol since I was 10. George's expression softened with pride. "I know. You'll do better than most of our adult diplomats. I just wish your mother could be here to see you off." Alan's smile faded slightly at the mention of his mother. General Catherine Wright commanded humanity's defensive fleet at the edge of Zorak space, maintaining the uneasy peace between humans and the vastly more advanced alien confederation. He hadn't seen her in person for nearly 2 years. I recorded a message for her last night, Alan said. Told her about the internship and that I'd make her proud. "She already is," George replied quietly. "More than you know." A soft chime from the wall panel interrupted them. "Transport arriving in 15 minutes, the house AI announced. Alan stood up, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment. This internship was everything he had worked for. A chance to further understanding between humans and aliens, to perhaps one day help secure a true peace, rather than the fragile standoff his mother maintained through military strength. "Do you think it will make a difference?" Alan asked suddenly. "One human intern among thousands of Zorak diplomats?" George straightened his son's collar, a gesture from childhood that now seemed both comforting and bittersweet. "Every bridge begins with a single stone, Alan. The Zorak see us as primitive, violent, unworthy of their grand confederacy. Each human who proves them wrong matters." The journey to Vector Prime took 3 weeks in hyperspace. Alan spent the time studying and preparing, aware that he would be under constant scrutiny as one of only 12 humans permitted on the Confederacy's capital world. When the ship finally emerged from hyperspace, the view took his breath away. Vector Prime was encircled by massive orbital structures, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the light of the system's blue-white sun. Hundreds of ships moved in precise patterns around the planet, a dance of technology and coordination that made human space traffic look chaotic by comparison. "First time seeing the capital?" asked a voice behind him. Alan turned to see a human woman in the gray uniform of the diplomatic corps. "Yes, ma'am." "Sam Jones," she said, extending her hand. "I'll be your advisor during your internship." Impressive, isn't it? The Zorak have had 20,000 years to build their civilization. We've had space travel for less than 300. Alan shook her hand. "It's overwhelming." "It's meant to be," Sam replied, her expression serious. "Remember, everything on Vector Prime is designed to remind visitors of Zorak superiority. Don't let it intimidate you." The diplomatic quarter where Alan would live and work was a small section of the vast city planet, designated for the few non-Confederacy species permitted representation. The human embassy was the smallest building in the quarter, a fact the Zorak representatives never failed to mention during formal functions. Alan's first days passed in a blur of orientation meetings and protocol briefings. He quickly noticed the subtle ways the Zorak officials dismissed him, the conversations that stopped when he entered a room, the barely concealed looks of disdain. On his 5th day, Alan was sitting in the embassy garden when his datapad chimed with an alert. The screen showed increasing civil unrest in several Confederacy sectors, with protests against human inclusion growing violent on 3 worlds. "Things are getting worse," Sam said, appearing beside his bench. "Anti-human sentiment has been growing for months." "Why?" Alan asked. "We've done everything they asked. Restricted our expansion, shared our resources. Sam's mouth tightened. Because we exist, Alan. Because despite their technological superiority, they fear us. Humans adapt too quickly. We learn too fast. Some Zorak believe if they wait too long, we'll catch up. That evening, while sending his weekly message to his father, the embassy alarms suddenly blared. Sam burst into his quarters, her face pale. "There's been a coup," she said urgently. "Radical factions have seized control of the central government. All non-Confederacy citizens are being detained." Through the window, Alan could see ships descending toward the diplomatic quarter, their design clearly military. "What about evacuation protocols?" "No time," Sam said, grabbing his arm. "We need to get to the secure bunker beneath the embassy." They never made it. The main doors exploded inward as armed Zorak soldiers stormed the building. In the chaos, Alan became separated from Sam. Seeing a group of human maintenance workers cornered by soldiers, he impulsively created a distraction, allowing them to escape down a service corridor. The last thing Alan saw before a stun blast hit him was the cold, multifaceted eyes of the Zorak commander. He awoke in a detention cell, wrists bound by energy restraints. The door slid open, revealing 3 high-ranking Zorak officials. Their translators crackled as they spoke. Alan Wright, son of diplomat George Wright and General Catherine Wright. The center official stated, "Your presence on Vector Prime has been determined to be espionage." "I'm an intern," Alan protested. "I have proper authorization." "You are the offspring of humanity's most dangerous military leader," the Zorak interrupted. "Your execution will serve as a message to your species." Alan's blood went cold. "You can't do this. There are laws, treaties." "The old government has fallen," the Zorak replied. "The new Confederacy will not tolerate the human threat." As they dragged him from the cell, Alan thought of his mother, commanding her fleet light years away, unaware of what was happening. He thought of his father, who believed so deeply in peace. As the Zorak prepared the execution chamber, Alan straightened his shoulders and raised his chin. His last thought before the energy beam struck was that he had failed to build the bridge his father spoke of. He didn't know that his death would instead become the spark that revealed humanity's true strength to the galaxy. Across the stars, General Catherine Wright was in a diplomatic meeting when the transmission interrupted her feed. On the screen, her son's execution played out in merciless detail, broadcast by the new Zorak regime as a declaration of intent. The alien diplomats watched her face, expecting grief, expecting weakness. Instead, they saw something that made their blood run cold. A look of absolute calculating fury settling into the eyes of the most dangerous military mind humanity had ever produced. And for the first time, the Zorak felt fear. The command center of the human flagship Guardian fell silent as the transmission ended. For 10 long seconds, no one moved. No one dared to breathe as they watched General Catherine Wright, her face a mask of ice as the image of her dead son faded from the main screen. "Resume recording," Catherine said, her voice steady. Too steady. The diplomats on the other end of the call looked pleased with themselves, their scaled faces showing what passed for smiles among the Zorak. "As I was saying," Catherine continued, "the Human Alliance wishes to express its concern about recent border violations." Commander Lisa Beck watched from her station, a cold knot forming in her stomach. 15 years serving under General Wright had taught her to read the subtle signs others missed. The slight tightening around Catherine's eyes, the precise, measured movements of her hands, the dangerous stillness in her posture. This wasn't grief. This was something far more terrifying. The call ended 30 minutes later with Catherine making diplomatic noises about further discussions and peaceful resolutions. The moment the connection cut, she turned to her command staff. "Clear the room," she ordered. "Commander Beck, stay." When they were alone, Catherine activated the security protocols that would prevent any recording or surveillance. She moved to the strategic display and pulled up the current positioning of all human fleet assets. For several minutes, she said nothing, simply studying the holographic representation of ships, stations, and border points. "Alan is dead," she finally said, her voice flat. Lisa nodded. unsure what to say. The general had always kept her family separate from her military duties. Few on the ship even knew she had a son. They believe they've sent us a message, Catherine continued. They believe they've demonstrated their power. Her fingers moved across the display, highlighting certain fleet elements. They've never understood us, Lisa. Not really? Ma'am? The Zorak think in absolutes, strength or weakness, victory or defeat. They see our diplomatic efforts as proof of our inferiority. She looked up, and Lisa nearly flinched at the cold calculation in her eyes. They've never considered that perhaps we choose restraint. Over the next 3 days, Catherine issued a series of orders that, taken individually, seemed like standard defensive realignments. 6 patrol ships recalled from the outer colonies. 3 specialized tech teams transferred to the Guardian. Acceleration of the quantum communication upgrade across the fleet. On the 4th day, she called George. His face appeared on her private screen, haggard with grief. Catherine, he said, his voice breaking. Our boy. I know, she cut him off. I saw it happen. George blinked, startled by her tone. The diplomatic corps is in chaos. The new Zorak regime has detained our representatives on 3 worlds. They're demanding we reduce our fleet by 60% or face open war. They already declared war when they killed our son, Catherine replied. She leaned closer to the screen. George, listen to me carefully. I need you to gather certain items from our home. The blue data crystal in my study. The emergency protocols we established. You need to activate them now. Understanding dawned on his face. Catherine, no. This is exactly what the hardliners want. An excuse for full-scale conflict. Alan wouldn't. Alan is dead, she interrupted, the words like stones. And I will not allow his death to be meaningless. The Zorak believe they can eliminate us whenever they choose. It's time they learned otherwise. 3 weeks later, Commander, Lisa stood on the bridge of the Guardian, watching as General Wright briefed the senior officers of humanity's combined fleet. Catherine had changed in subtle ways since her son's death. She wore her hair differently now, pulled back severely from her face. Her uniform was impeccable as always, but she had removed the diplomatic corps pin she had worn for years in honor of her husband's work. The Confederacy believes we are retreating, Catherine explained, pointing to the holographic display showing human forces pulling back from key positions. Their intelligence reports show our fleet in disarray, our command structure fractured following their coup, and the execution of human diplomatic personnel. Captain John Howard frowned. With respect, General, we are pulling back. We've abandoned 3 forward bases in the last month. Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. What we've abandoned were positions that served their purpose, showing the Zorak exactly what we wanted them to see. Meanwhile, Operation Trojan Horse is proceeding exactly as planned. She expanded the display to show a complex network of infiltration points throughout Zorak space. For 15 years, I've maintained humanity's defensive line while George and the diplomatic corps worked for peace. For 15 years, I've hidden our true capabilities, developed countermeasures for every Zorak advantage, and placed assets they never detected. The display shifted again, revealing dozens of stealth outposts and concealed weapon platforms positioned around supposedly secure Zorak installations. The Confederacy has always seen us as primitives playing at galactic politics, Catherine continued. They believe their technology makes them untouchable. They've never understood that humanity's true strength isn't in our ships or our weapons. Her eyes swept across the assembled officers. It's in our ability to plan, to adapt, and when necessary to strike with absolute precision. Lisa watched as understanding spread across the faces of the fleet commanders. What had appeared to be retreat was actually the most dangerous military stratagem in history, and the Zorak had no idea it was coming. Later that evening, Lisa found Catherine alone in her quarters studying a hollow image of Alan. It was the only personal item visible in the otherwise Spartan room. You've been planning this for years, Lisa said quietly. Long before Alan's death? Catherine didn't look up. I've planned for the possibility. I never wanted to implement it. She finally turned, her expression resolute. The Zorak understand. Only strength, Lisa. They respect only those they fear. I gave them 15 years to recognize humanity as equals, to accept peaceful coexistence. Instead, they killed my son to send a message. She stood, switching off the hollow image. Now I will send one in return. Across Zorak space, the first signs of trouble were already appearing. Communication relays experiencing unexplained outages, navigation systems showing momentary glitches, supply shipments arriving with critical components mysteriously damaged or missing. Minor inconveniences, easily attributed to equipment failures or administrative errors. Nothing that would alarm the overconfident Zorak leadership. Nothing that would warn them of what was coming. On the frontier world of Heskethru, a Zorak military commander received an unusual report from his security chief. Human diplomatic personnel evacuating after the coup had left behind a small memorial marker. Written on it in both human and Zorak languages was a simple message that puzzled the commander. They never saw her coming. The commander dismissed it as meaningless human sentiment. He would remember those words 3 weeks later, when his entire command center went dark. The moon of Krell orbited silently in the shadow of its gas giant parent. On its dark side, away from casual scans, a small human shuttle docked with a nondescript station that officially did not exist. General Catherine Wright stepped through the airlock, alone and dressed in civilian clothes. No insignia, no weapons, no escort. To anyone watching, she might have been a traitor or a lost tourist. Inside waited representatives of 3 species: the insectoid Vish, the amphibious Noor, and the crystalline Tella. All 3 were technically members of the Zorak Confederacy, though none by choice. Each had seen their homeworlds absorbed into the Empire centuries ago, their cultures suppressed, their people relegated to servant status. "You came alone," said the Vish representative, mandibles clicking in surprise. "We expected a diplomatic team." "I am not here as a diplomat," Catherine replied, taking a seat at the round table. "I am here to offer you what the Zorak never have: choice." The meeting lasted 6 hours. Catherine laid out her plan with cold precision, explaining exactly what role each species could play in the coming conflict. She offered them autonomy, protection, and partnership, but demanded intelligence and support in return. The Zorak believe their technology makes them invincible, she told them. They never considered that their greatest weakness is not technological. It's psychological. They cannot imagine defeat, and so they never prepare for it. As she left, the Noor representative, a female named Shah, approached her privately. "You speak not as someone fighting for survival, but as someone who has already won a war that hasn't yet begun." Catherine paused. "The war began when they executed my son. They just don't know it yet." Back aboard the Guardian, Commander Lisa Beck met Catherine in the secure strategy room. The walls displayed dozens of information streams, each monitoring different aspects of Operation Trojan Horse. "Phase 1 is complete," Lisa reported. "The quantum communication virus has been uploaded to 86% of Confederacy relay stations. Their security systems never detected the infiltration." Catherine nodded, studying the displays. "And our allies?" "The Vish have already begun disrupting supply chains on 12 Zorak worlds. The Noor are providing access to underwater facilities we couldn't reach. The Tella..." Lisa hesitated. "The Tella are hesitant. Their crystalline biology makes them vulnerable to certain Zorak weapons. They'll join when they see we can win," Catherine said with certainty. She pointed to a flashing indicator on one screen. "Tell me about this." Lisa expanded the display. Sam Jones made contact. She survived the purge at the embassy on Vector Prime. She's been hiding in the Undercity with other human survivors, and she has information about the new defense grid the regime is installing. Catherine's eyes glinted. "Perfect. Have her data securely transmitted, then extract her team. They've earned passage home." That night, Catherine received a secure transmission from Earth. George appeared on screen, his diplomatic polish now replaced with a hard determination that matched her own. "The Alliance Council is asking questions," he said without preamble. "They've noticed the fleet movements. Admiral Perry suspects you're planning something beyond the defensive measures you reported." "And what did you tell them?" Catherine asked. George's expression was grim. "That my wife is ensuring humanity's survival. I've activated our emergency protocols. Core data systems have been hardened against potential Zorak cyber attacks. Colonial evacuation routes are prepared but hidden." He paused, then added more softly, "I found Alan's last message to you. He recorded it the night before. He left for Vector Prime." Catherine's composure slipped for just a moment. "Send it to my private channel," she said, her voice barely audible. After George's transmission ended, Catherine sat alone in her quarters and played her son's final message. Alan's face appeared, smiling nervously at the camera. "Hi, Mom," he began. "I know you're busy keeping humanity safe, but I wanted to tell you about this internship. Dad says it's a big deal, being one of the first humans to really work within the Confederacy. I think this could be the beginning of real understanding between us and them." Catherine watched silently as her son spoke of his hopes, his belief that peaceful coexistence was possible. His final words struck her like physical blows. "I'm going to make you proud, Mom. Maybe someday they'll see us as equals, not as threats. Maybe I can help build that bridge. Love you." The message ended. Catherine sat motionless for a long time. Then she wiped a single tear from her cheek and returned to the command center. 6 weeks into Operation Trojan Horse, the Zorak Confederacy began experiencing unprecedented military and civilian system failures. On 17 border worlds, power grids suddenly collapsed. In 6 major shipyards, navigation systems sent valuable vessels crashing into each other. Throughout Zorak space, military communications became garbled or disappeared entirely. The RAO, Confederacy's ruling council, certain these were merely internal malfunctions, ordered immediate repairs and blamed maintenance failures. They dismissed reports of unusual human fleet movements as irrelevant. Humans were retreating, not advancing. Their intelligence confirmed it. Then came the first direct strike, a supposedly secret Zorak weapons development station in the Merrick. System simply vanished overnight. All personnel, all research, all prototypes gone without explanation. Security recordings showed nothing. Nearby sensors detected no ships. 3 days later, it happened again. A high-security communications hub disappeared without a trace. Admiral Vexcor, one of the few Zorak military leaders who had always cautioned against underestimating humans, urgently requested an emergency council meeting. His concerns were dismissed. The Supreme Leader himself reminded Vexcor that human military capability was well documented and posed no serious threat to Confederacy security. Their most advanced ships are barely equivalent to our third-class vessels, the Supreme Leader stated confidently. Their weapons technology is primitive. Their tactical doctrine is predictable. As the council meeting concluded, a junior officer rushed in with an urgent report. 3 Confederacy fleets had gone dark simultaneously. No distress signals, no signs of battle, simply gone. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the Supreme Leader's face. That same day, human ships appeared in 50 star systems simultaneously, their capabilities nothing like what Zorak intelligence had recorded. They moved with impossible speed and precision, neutralizing military targets with surgical accuracy while avoiding civilian areas. On the bridge of the Guardian, Catherine Wright issued commands with calm efficiency as reports of successful strikes flooded in. The human crews watched their general with a mixture of awe and unease. None had imagined this level of planning, this perfect coordination of forces that had been hidden for years. "The Zorak are scrambling to understand what's happening," Lisa reported. "Their command structure is in chaos. They expected a direct confrontation, ships against ships. They never anticipated this kind of warfare." Catherine nodded, watching the tactical display as another Zorak military installation went offline. "They believe in overwhelming force," she said. "They never understood that true strategy isn't about who has the bigger guns," She turned to her communications officer. Prepare for Phase 3. It's time the Confederacy learned the price of taking my son. Panic spread through the grand halls of the Zorak High Command on Vector Prime. Emergency alarms blared as officials rushed between monitoring stations, their scaled faces showing fear many had never experienced before. The Supreme Leader stood before the massive central display, watching as one after another red indicators showed Zorak military bases going silent across the galaxy. Impossible, he hissed, his translator barely keeping up with his agitated speech. How can primitive humans bypass our defenses? Where are they getting this technology? Admiral Vexicor studied the pattern of attacks with growing dread. Unlike his fellow commanders, he had made a point of studying human history, particularly their warfare. What he saw unfolding wasn't random violence or desperate retaliation. It was methodical, purposeful, almost artistic in its execution. They aren't bypassing our defenses, Vexicor said quietly. They're using our own systems against us. The Supreme Leader turned to him, rage evident in the flaring of his neck ridges. Explain. Vexicor moved to the central display and began highlighting attack patterns. Look at the sequence. Each strike precisely targets command and control nodes, communication hubs, and supply chains, but deliberately avoids population centers. This isn't just about military victory. It's sending a message. What message? Demanded the defense minister. That they could destroy us entirely but are choosing not to. Vexicor pointed to specific data points. These attacks, they're following a pattern I've seen before, in historical records from Earth. It's a strategy developed by General Catherine Wright during the colonial conflicts. The Supreme Leader's eyes narrowed. The mother of the executed spy? Not a spy, Vexicor corrected carefully. A diplomatic intern, her son. Silence fell across the command center. Even in their arrogance, the Zorak understood family bonds. The implications were clear. You're suggesting this is revenge? The defense minister asked incredulously. I'm suggesting this is something far more dangerous, Vexicor replied. This is calculated retribution from perhaps the most brilliant military mind humanity has produced. And we gave her the perfect motivation. The Supreme Leader waved away these concerns. One human cannot threaten the entire Confederacy, mobilize our main battle fleets, crush their ships, demonstrate our superior. The lights in the command center suddenly went out. The massive display flickered, then showed a single human face, General Catherine Wright, her expression as calm and cold as space itself. Your main battle fleets cannot deploy, she said simply. Your command codes have been compromised. Your navigation systems are under our control. Your weapons will not fire. The Supreme Leader sputtered in rage. This is a trick, a human deception. Catherine's expression didn't change. Test it if you wish. Order your ships to fire on a human target. See what happens. The defense minister immediately issued commands to the nearest fleet. On the auxiliary displays, they watched as Zorak warships turned their weapons not on human vessels, but on each other. How? The Supreme Leader whispered, all arrogance gone from his voice. For 15 years you believed yourselves our superiors, Catherine replied. For 15 years I let you believe it while placing agents throughout your empire, developing countermeasures for your technology, and learning every weakness in your systems. You mistook restraint for weakness. You mistook diplomacy for fear. Her image expanded to show the bridge of her command ship. Behind her stood rows of human officers, their faces set with the same cold determination. You executed my son to send humanity a message. Now I am sending one in return. The screens around the command center began showing simultaneous attacks across Zorak space. Human ships suddenly revealing capabilities far beyond what the Confederacy had believed possible, systematically neutralized military installations while leaving civilian infrastructure intact. This isn't an extermination, Catherine continued. This is education. You will surrender your military authority. You will withdraw from the worlds you have subjugated. You will agree to equal standing with all sentient species in this galaxy. or you will lose everything." The transmission cut off, leaving the Zorak leadership staring at blank screens. Admiral Vexcor turned to the Supreme Leader. "We should consider her terms." "Never," the Supreme Leader raged. "We will not bow to primitives." Vexcor's expression hardened. "Then you doom our people to destruction out of pride." On the Guardian, Catherine received the Supreme Leader's defiant response. With a small nod, as if she had expected nothing less, she turned to Commander Lisa Beck. "Implement Phase 4, she ordered, "and send the signal to our allies." Across the galaxy, the subjugated species that had suffered under Zorak rule for centuries received coded transmissions. The Vish, the Nor, the Tela, and a dozen others rose up simultaneously, targeting Zorak control systems on their homeworlds. Security forces found their weapons disabled. Communication networks broadcast evidence of Zorak atrocities committed against their peoples. Catherine watched the reports flood in, her expression unchanging. This wasn't just a military operation anymore. It was a revolution spreading across 1,000 worlds. "The Tela have secured 3 key Zorak research stations," Lisa reported. "The Nor have taken control of the underwater cities on Krell. The Vish..." She paused, looking up from her display with something like awe. "The Vish royal hives are broadcasting support for our cause. They're calling it the Liberation." Catherine nodded. "And our primary objective?" "Strike teams have secured the execution chamber on Vectar Prime where..." Lisa hesitated, then continued more softly. "Where Alan was killed. They're holding position, awaiting your orders." For the first time in weeks, something like emotion flickered across Catherine's face. "Tell them to stand by. I'll be leading that operation personally." Later that night, George Wright contacted Catherine through their secure channel. He looked exhausted but resolute. "The Alliance Council has been watching the broadcast from Confederacy space," he said. "They're stunned, Catherine. No one imagined we had this capability. They're demanding briefings, explanations." "They'll get them when this is finished," she replied. "What's the situation on Earth?" Mixed reactions. Some are celebrating what they're calling our victory. Others are concerned about potential retaliation. George paused. "Catherine, I found something in Alan's personal files, something he was working on before he left. It's a proposal for a new type of alliance between humans and other species. He called it the Galactic Cooperative." Catherine's composure slipped, just slightly. "Send it to me," she said. When George's transmission ended, Catherine opened the file. Alan's voice narrated his vision of a different kind of interstellar community, one based on mutual respect rather than dominance, on cooperation rather than subjugation. "The Confederacy model has failed," Alan's voice explained. "Any system, built on the premise of superior and inferior species, is inherently unstable. What I'm proposing instead is a cooperative where technological advantage doesn't determine political power." As she listened to her son's words, Catherine's carefully constructed wall of cold determination began to crack. This was what he had been working toward. This was what the Zorak had destroyed with their arrogance. And perhaps this was what she could build from the ashes of the Confederacy. The next morning, as the Guardian prepared to lead the final assault on Vectar Prime, Catherine made a decision that surprised even her closest officers. She transmitted a message directly to Admiral Vexcor, bypassing the Supreme Leader entirely. "You understand what's happening," she told him. "You know you cannot win. I'm offering you a chance to save your people from the consequences of their leader's pride." Vexcor's reply came hours later, a single line of text that would change the course of the conflict. "I am prepared to discuss terms that do not include our extinction." For the first time since her son's death, Catherine Wright smiled. The Guardian emerged from hyperspace above Vectar Prime, leading a fleet of human warships that filled the sky like stars. Below, on the Confederacy capital world, citizens looked up in fear, expecting destruction. But the human ships held position, weapons powered down. In a neutral meeting chamber on the orbital diplomatic station, two enemies faced each other across a simple table. General Catherine Wright sat alone on one side. Across from her, Admiral Vexcor represented the Zorak, flanked by representatives of the council races who had defied the Supreme Leader's orders against negotiation. "You have dismantled our military capability in 3 weeks," Vexcor stated, his translator conveying grudging respect, a feat our analysts claimed was impossible. Catherine's face remained impassive. "Your analysts underestimated human ingenuity, a common failing among the Confederacy leadership." Vexcor's scaled head tilted slightly. "The Supreme Leader still refuses to surrender. He believes you will not destroy Vector Prime." "He is correct," Catherine replied. "I have no intention of harming civilians or destroying worlds. That would make me no better than those who executed my son." She placed a data device on the table. It projected a holographic image of the galaxy, with thousands of points highlighted in red. "These are all the Zorak military installations, command centers, and weapons platforms currently under human control," she explained. "We could destroy them with a single command. Instead, I offer terms." The Zorak representatives shifted uncomfortably as she outlined her demands. The Supreme Leader and those responsible for Alan's execution would face justice. The Confederacy would be reformed into an alliance of equals. All subjugated species would be granted independence and reparations, and a new interspecies council would be established with equal representation. "Impossible," one of the council members hissed. "The Zorak have ruled this sector for 20,000 years. We will not surrender our rightful place." "Your rightful place," Catherine interrupted coldly, "is alongside other sentient species, not above them. That is the choice before you. Equality or obsolescence." She stood, placing another device on the table. "This contains a proposal for a new interstellar organization, a galactic cooperative based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. It was designed by my son, the boy your leaders executed to teach humanity a lesson." Vexcor reached for the device, studying the contents with genuine curiosity. "This is not what I expected," he admitted. "Alan believed in peaceful coexistence," Catherine said, her voice softening slightly for the first time. "He saw potential for something better than the Confederacy model of dominance and submission. His death will not have been meaningless. One way or another, change is coming." As negotiations continued on the station, Commander Lisa Beck coordinated the final phase of Catherine's plan from the Guardian. Strike teams composed of humans and their new allies from formerly subjugated species secured key locations across Vector Prime. The Supreme Leader, barricaded in his fortress with his most loyal guards, found himself increasingly isolated as his government fractured around him. "The Vish have secured the Central Archives," Lisa reported to Catherine when she returned to the ship. "Every record of Confederacy atrocities, every suppressed history of conquered worlds, they're broadcasting it all across the galaxy." Catherine nodded. "And our primary objective?" "Secure, General. The team is in position at the execution chamber, awaiting your arrival." Hours later, Catherine stood alone in the sterile room where her son had died. The space had been designed for efficiency, with none of the ceremony or dignity that even criminals deserved at their end. A simple energy discharge, a disposal chute, and records erased as if the person had never existed. This was what the Zorak had considered justice. She placed her hand on the cold metal platform where Alan had stood in his final moments. She had imagined this moment for weeks, standing where he had stood, seeing what he had seen. "Was it worth it?" asked a voice behind her. Catherine turned to see George entering the chamber. He looked older than when she'd last seen him in person, grief having carved new lines in his face. "The Alliance Council sent me to oversee the diplomatic transition," he explained. "But I needed to see this place first, to understand." Catherine looked back at the platform. "He was afraid at the end. I saw it in the recording, but he didn't beg, didn't break." George moved beside her, placing his hand next to hers on the platform. "That's not what I asked, Catherine. Was it worth it? This war, this revolution, would Alan have wanted this?" She was silent for a long moment. "No," she finally admitted. "He would have found another way, a better way." She looked at her husband. But I'm not him. I'm a soldier. I know how to win wars, not how to build peace. Then perhaps it's time to learn, George suggested. The cooperative proposal, his proposal, is being discussed right now in the council chambers. The Vish, the Nor, the Tella, even some Zorak delegations are supporting it. They're calling for human leadership in the transition, Ethrin shook her head. Not me. I've done what I do best. The galaxy doesn't need a general now. No, George agreed. It needs a mother who understands the cost of conflict, who can ensure no other parent faces what we faced. 3 days later, Catherine stood before the newly formed Provisional Galactic Council. Representatives from 27 species, including humans and Zorak, gathered in the former Confederacy chamber, now stripped of its imperial symbols. Tiu, Supreme Leader, had been captured attempting to flee the capital. Admiral Vexicor, now leading the moderate Zorak faction, had presented evidence of crimes spanning centuries. Justice would come, though not the vengeful kind the old regime had practiced. General Wright, began the Vish representative, the Council has reviewed your son's cooperative proposal. We find its principles sound and wish to implement them as the foundation of our new alliance. We ask that you lead the transition committee. Catherine looked across the faces watching her. Former enemies, new allies, species that had suffered under Zorak rule and now sought something better. She thought of Alan, of his belief that understanding could overcome hatred. I accept, she said, on one condition, that the first act of this new cooperative be the establishment of the Wright Memorial Institute for Interspecies Relations. Not to honor my son, but to ensure that diplomacy always takes precedence over military action. 1 year later, Catherine stood at a small memorial garden created where the execution chamber had once been. Plants from 20 worlds grew together, symbolizing the new cooperation flowering across the galaxy. The former Confederacy, now the Galactic Cooperative, faced enormous challenges, but progress was real and measurable. She placed a small stone from Earth near the central marker, a private gesture to connect her son to his homeworld. As she stood in quiet reflection, she noticed a small group approaching. A Zorak female led several children toward the memorial. Catherine recognized her, the daughter of Admiral Vexicor, now one of the strongest supporters of the cooperative. The Oi, children, both Zorak and other species, carried small tokens to place at the memorial. They moved with the solemn curiosity of youth, understanding that something important had happened here, but not fully comprehending the history it represented. The Zorak female nodded respectfully to Catherine. They learn his story in school. Now, she said, how one human's death changed the galaxy. Catherine watched as a small Zorak child carefully placed a crystalline flower by her son's marker. Not his death, Catherine corrected softly. His life, his vision. As she turned to leave, Catherine felt something she had not expected to find in this place. A sense of peace. The merciless general who had brought a galactic empire to its knees had completed her mission. Now perhaps it was time for Alan's mother to continue his work. Behind her, as if in agreement, the foreign plants from distant worlds grew together under a common sun.